Hello, good morning. Welcome, everyone. Well, today I'd like to begin by looking at timelines and by looking at our relationship to this topic of timelines. So, I've actually written some notes because I did a reading, I guess it was in 2021, and some incredible information came through in that reading. And I'd like to share some of that with you to start us off on this very timely topic. So, to begin with, I'd like to mention how throughout history, different civilizations have had their time and they tend to go through these cycles. So we've talked about cycles before. We're looking at large epochs or, astronomical cycles, the precession of the equinox, the different ages from the golden age, the silver age, and so on. And then we also have smaller cycles, periodic cycles within those cycles. So, on average, empires and civilizations have a trajectory. And at some point, usually around 240 years into that trajectory, they begin to decline. Now, I want to speak about this. It's very significant because what has happened to us in our historical record, because we're actually going through the darker ages in the last 2 or 3 thousand years, is that each time one of these civilizations or empires went into decline, we basically recreated it in the same model. So, for example, the Roman Empire had its trajectory, went into decline, and on the downswing of that, we built another empire based on the same model, which was the British Empire. So we see these cycles or these trajectories, and instead of going into a transitional phase where we look at what do we want to keep from the positive advancements in science or technology or cultural and social advancement during those times, philosophy and so on, instead of going in and drawing those gifts out of that experience and then saying what in that old paradigm is outmoded, what do we need to move away from? There's been this tendency to just rebuild in the same model or template of the old or the same frequency of the old. So if we're looking at timelines as a concept, it's important that we begin by recognizing that as these transitions take place, if we try to rush that process and go, just hurry up and build something new, it's like we are still in the frequency, that outmoded frequency, for a while. Yes, we are evolving at lightning speed right now. Absolutely. The activation process is so phenomenal, like never before, I really believe. And yet, this urgency to rush is part of that old power dominant slave system. It's based on fear, it's based on lack. And if we rush at this incredibly potent, transformational, transitional place in our evolutionary process, we will likely build similar frequency models that will only prolong the time it takes for us to evolve into the new earth, into this ascended frequency. So I'd like to also speak to you for a few moments. I am going to pull the cards in here shortly, but I really want to make these points very clear because I'm witnessing some phenomena with time, and I have to actually own up that I have struggled with time. I'm a Gemini and I try to do everything at once. I've been phenomenally impatient and driven for most of my life. My children can attest to this. It's like I've had a very challenging relationship with time, and it's been a big part of my personal trauma healing and my work in developing these practices that you could only really describe as shamanic type of practices, like deep personal initiations, where I've had to face my own inner demons of being impatient and rushing things, and how many things I've actually, stalled or complicated or sabotaged because of that tendency. So when I'm speaking about this, it's with absolute empathy and compassion to all of you. This is how we are programmed, and at the base of it is our trauma, which means, oh my gosh, if it isn't changing at a direct, rapid increase, if we're not going on this direct, things are getting better today than yesterday, better today than the day before, better than, on and on. If there's any fluctuation, we panic and we go, oh no, it's not happening. Oh, it's wrong. The timelines are wrong. That person lied about this, and so on. And so guess what? What kind of frequency is that? We're back into fear. Whew, down goes our frequency. And we've just slowed the whole process down again. It takes incredible inner self-mastery, self-awareness, healing of our ego trauma to stand in that uncertainty and say, yes, I see all these things around me, and these timelines that have been predicted and aren't happening fast enough. Does that indicate that we're not succeeding? Feel in your heart. And if you're coming from a place of overwhelm and anxiety, then the first step is to resolve that before you contemplate future timelines. I'm going to give you a little story about this, just a brief, quick little story, which is throughout all my years of working with clients, in the beginning as a reader especially, I would have very demanding people that wanted timelines. They wanted absolute predictions, like tell me what's going to happen and tell me when it's going to happen. And if I tried to sort of mitigate and soften around that, they'd pressure me to give answers. And I had to learn to create boundaries first within myself and say, as soon as we go into that mode as readers, as, intuitives, as psychics, we're out of what I call the whole brain, heart-centered, power-neutral space of love, and we're into fear. So anything that comes through that channel is going to be distorted. And why do we get pushed like that? Well, people are pressuring us. So let's start by backing up here and acknowledging that if we press for absolute timeline prediction and then get attached to those dates and really pressure our intuitives and psychics that are are doing their very best. I mean, the majority of the ones that I've worked with through the years are doing their very best to stay in that heart-centered frequency, power neutral frequency of love, and not get into fear and not get into, timeline absolutes. It's, if just imagine what it feels like for us when we read through the comments and people are like lambasting us for not giving them dates and not, but then when we give them dates, they, it basically is creating this setup for them feeling like we've created false hope. And then it's really easy to move into disillusionment of all of it. Like, nobody's making predictions that we can trust, and the timelines aren't working out, and so on. So I know I'm going on about this, but I feel like this is a testament. How fierce I'm feeling about this is a testament to your courage. You are courageous enough to really take this in at this moment. This is the moment for us all to say, take a breath. Okay. What happens when we're working with people who are traumatized? What happens when we're working with traumatized children or teenagers? If you go in and pressure them, you get a wall and everything shuts down. The healing shuts down. So we've got to go in gently as a humanity, as a collective consciousness. This does not mean we can't have spontaneous activation, timeline shifts, upgrades. I've personally witnessed this. I've witnessed back in the late 90s, I left my marriage and I had gone through one of the darkest phases of my life. And I made a decision, a very courageous decision, to go with my heart and my passion and move to a place that I've always wanted to live and connect with a phenomenal community of conscious-minded people. Our conversation about community coming up, and trust. And for a brief period of time, maybe a year and a half, I managed to, what I feel like, exist in an accelerated experience of something equivalent to 5D. Like, the phenomena, the magic, the synchronicities were literally daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes moment to moment. So I know that that shift can happen very quickly, but it didn't happen because I was afraid or pressuring myself or everyone else. It happened because I moved forward with a sense of curiosity and joy beyond my fear. And ironically, there was a lot of us that were congregating at that time with that frequency. And then 9/11 happened and it really bottomed that energy out. And unfortunately, it feels like we've been recovering ever since then. However, we've also been deep diving. We've been deep diving into our collective shadow. And now the amount of healing that's taken place, the amount of personal responsibility that every one of you are working within yourself, within your own little sphere of experience, family, friends, and so on, your personal relationships, your relationship to spirit, to the creator. All of these things have been deepened because of what we've gone through. So, my little rant and speech is over. I'd like to quickly tell you the timeline predictions that came through for me in a reading in 2021. And again, like I said, please acknowledge that this whole idea of stretching our capacity to trust the process in terms of longer term visions and timelines, I have to tell you, when I'm speaking with intuitives personally, when we're sharing behind the scenes, most of us are seeing these long-term timelines, but a lot of us are afraid to talk to you all about it because you're like, no, no, it has to be faster. I can't handle that. I'll go crazy if it doesn't happen next month or this year or something. And it's like, well, the point is, it is happening. It is happening in every moment, every little moment that you decide to embody that frequency. You are the change. We are the ones we've been waiting for. You are the change. You are the ascension. It's already happening. But to imagine that it's going to be done deal next month, next year, even 10 years from now, I just have to say, it's a naivety that's based in trauma. It's a naivety that comes from not trusting processes because we feel that we don't have time. And let's care for ourselves. Let's care for that part of ourselves, because everything that is worth building, this transitional phase that we're going through, everything that's worth building for future generations is worth putting long-term vision into, and really not applying this pressure of time compression and impatience, because it's the opposite frequency of what's actually going to birth the new paradigm. Oh, yes. Hello. Chris, yeah, we are also very tired. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the tiredness. We're tired of upholding a frequency that might be foreign to us. We're tired of staying in fight or flight. I knew it was one of those. We're tired of that, holding that frequency, right? Like courage, fierceness. And what I want to say, Chris, is put it down. Put it down for a few days, a few weeks, and let some of us who are having our next win pick it up for you. You don't have to hold it all together for this ascension. We are in this together. Let's trade off. Let's trade off being vigilant. It's safe to take a pause and step away for a little while and heal, do your inner work, so that there's this whole understanding of we've got to get to a kind of emptiness. I in a way we could call this time burnout. We're in time burnout. We've got to empty the coffers and just let the void and the mystery be present for a while and wait for divine inspiration. And you could say, yeah, but I've done that and it didn't happen. And that, again, connected to a type of time burnout. Sometimes if we're really time burned out, it takes longer than we think it's going to take for that softness to reemerge. So take a breath, everyone. This timeline prediction, just like when I give timeline predictions in my readings, which I tend to not do as much as I used to, but I still will do it, especially if I feel the frequency is going to be valuable for the individual, like where they can actually visualize healing trajectory between now and then. This is why I believe that it's important that we do give ourselves decades even centuries for the kind of healing that we are visualizing ultimately. Because if we can allow that spaciousness, so much is available to transform that is truly full spectrum, universal law, natural law transformation. So it's both ends of that spectrum. It's seeing the long-term self, say 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, looking back to the now and saying, calm down. Where we're going is even more amazing than you can even imagine right now, but it's going to take some processes to get there. So relax. And it's also the in this moment self, the here now self that says, be present. Little miracles are everywhere. Keep your frequency activated. And you may be living in that future potential here now, even if the rest of the world around you is not appearing to resonate with that. I mean, that's how we felt back in the late 90s in my community of like-minded spiritual warriors. We felt like we were like just so fortunate, because as other things were really closed down and people were not activated and awake and aware and open and having these transformational experiences, we were just going off like popcorn. And we were like, how can it be that we're here having these experiences and people around us haven't got a clue about it, and they're not in that frequency at all? So have compassion for the long-term process. Here's the dates. And then I'm going to pull cards on how this may have changed since 2021 when I did this. So we're going to start with the big mythology. The mythology of these times begins in 2121, which means they're looking back at the now and we are the heroes. They're going to be writing books about us, singing songs about us. The mythology has landed, and as that's happening, let's tune into that. Feel it now. As that's happening, it's bolstering us. It's giving us energy, Chris. It's like, I can hear it. I can hear their songs in the distance, talking about us, talking about what we're doing right now. So 2121, okay. Now, I also got exponential acceleration in 30 years. Now I know, please don't be too upset. Please don't write really mean things in the comments to me. It's okay if you want to say, I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, I don't know if I can handle that, but please do not lash out, because it's hard to stand in that and take that. Please have compassion for those of us that are working with what's coming through us and trying to support the overall healing. So 2082, so 2051, I got a new wave of avatars coming in. So children born in the 30 years following 2051, off the charts. I mean, between now and then too. But again, feel, maybe that's some of us that are going to reincarnate back. Maybe that's our parents and grandparents and ancestors that are waiting for us down there in a new version of themselves. And 2082, we hit critical mass. Now, everybody's going, what? We got to hit critical mass this month, this year, because otherwise these systems aren't going to change. They are changing. They are changing. I would even venture to say the energy is suggesting to me that no matter what we do, they're changing. And the more we can stay in this frequency of the grandest design, the big design, think about it like you're designing a whole system. And if you rush that design, it's going to have flaws in it. Like, allow it to emerge in its phenomenal fullness. So 2084, full ascension planet-wide. Not long after that came through in a reading, I heard of another channel that saw, relative to the pyramids in Egypt, they saw an activation process that followed these particular timelines. And their process went like this. The reactivation of the pyramids began in 2012. Of course, the preparation for the reactivation of the pyramids has been ongoing. The whole thing is part of a giant timeline. It's not like there's this miraculous moment where it happens, and before that, there's nothing. It's all part of these processes. So according to this channel, the reactivation, the big burst of reactivation, 2012, that makes sense. And then it accelerates exponentially every 22 years following that. For 5 jumping points. Guess where that ends? 2122. And I said 2121. And their points are 2034, 2056, which is around my 2051 point, 2078, and 2100, and the last one being 2122. So just imagine this to comfort yourself. I always like to imagine it like the thin edge of the wedge. We are at the front. And so many of us are already going to be living in 5D, in these beautiful communities, in these processes. We're already going to be there, and we will have the opportunity to do the trauma healing work, to do the shamanic healing work, the initiation process, to support each other, having breaks and having time off from being courageous and holding that frontline position. So all the way in this next 100 years, we're going to be living in a different paradigm than a lot of other people on the planet. And yet, we're also going to need to get used to a whole spectrum of experience around us and not be psyched out and discouraged if everything doesn't shift overnight. It's important to continue to watch the progress. Keep your eye on where you're going and not look back. Interesting. It reminds me of the biblical stories about not looking back at the falling. What is it? Sodom and Gomorrah, that story about don't look back. You know, it's, and again, the guides are saying, be kind to time. Time can be our ally if we can open our hearts to it. Universal natural law is not in a rush. Only human ego is in a rush. So I'm going to look at those timelines. Yes, I know people can be like, oh no, you've just talked for half an hour and I really want to see you lay some cards down. And we are doing that. We are doing that. Again, please have patience. And know that your comments, again, as I said, you know, speaking with other intuitives and channels and healers, your comments of encouragement and or frustration and anger are absolutely welcome and have a place here. And also, you have a tremendous impact on the whole thing as well. So let's have a look at this timeline that I was shown. Oh, gosh. The timeline, I'm saying gosh, because the Fool comes through, and the Fool throughout my reading history has been the card that says, don't look for an answer. Trust the process. Oh my gosh. Okay. Trust the process. Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay. This is good news. Yeah. Back to that story of most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10. So we're stealing from our future by demanding that it's here before it's ready. It's kind of like, opening the oven before the cake's baked. And then we're actually, making it so that it won't rise properly and so on. So here's us. And for all of you that are watching, that are present, we are being swept up in an energy of love, universal love, unconditional love, faith, trust. What is the value of these guidelines, of these prophecies, of these timeline predictions? What's the value of them? They help us get comfortable, get in the groove. They encourage us to develop sustainable long-term strength. Let's acknowledge that the turning point is already behind us. So the trajectory is beautiful, especially for those of us that are willing to hold this frequency and not look back. And then we can actually work with these timeline predictions. We can say, okay, we've got, what was the first one? 2051. So now it is, that was 30 years. It's 28 years. We've got that amount of time. So let's say, for example, that those avatars are coming, like phenomenal avatars are coming. We've got 28 years to build them paradise to live in. 28 years to build them phenomenal models of education and opportunities to arrive and be beautifully ushered into educational models that actually don't shut them down, that open them up and activate them, usher them into communities that are healthy already, healthy spiritually, psychologically, and emotionally, and physically, healthy food being grown, healthy relationships, healthy currency exchange economics, balanced reciprocity. We've got 28 years. I say, oh, actually, we do have to get a move on, right? It's like, never mind focusing on that's too long. Actually, is that going to be long enough? Like, let's get into the spirit of, okay, now this is one of the biggest points I got to make. We've been trained to think about ourselves. look out for number one, individualize, become fiercely autonomous and independent. And yet there's also a sense of, well, 30 years is too long because I won't be here. And what's the point? Yeah, what's the point? So we really allow ourselves to truly stand behind inside our true deepest values, which is the children are the point. The next generations are the point. I mean, we don't need to sacrifice ourselves. It doesn't mean we have to live a horrible life so that they have this beauty, but we can live in increasing abundance, increasing success in building community, in sharing, in grassroots movements and activation of earth consciousness healing and so on. We get to live that fun, live out that fantasy, and also be part of the cleanup crew, be part of the rebuilding crew. And when they arrive, it's not going to be easy, but it'll be gracious for them. And they're going to look back at us and say, oh my gosh, 2021, 21, 22 they're already singing. Can you hear it? These were the people that woke up. I mean, I feel like I'm going to cry. These were the people that woke up and said, I care about the future. I care about the future generations. It's not just about my mortgage and my house, and my holidays and my, I worked for 30 years in the system and now I want something back. These were the people that said, knowing that I'm part of the healing is the greatest gift of all. And that I've had the blessing to wake up and settle into my shamanic teacher, Martine Prechtel, says, growing ourselves into elders worth descending from. Now, that doesn't mean that other elders before us weren't worth descending from, but what we can offer to our future generations from this place of open-hearted courage, stepping into the frequencies of these timelines that grow exponentially. Okay, so all of this comes with the caveat of it could happen in a year or 2 or 10. I am not saying that is not a possibility. What I'm saying is that our attachment to that type of acceleration it's very important to acknowledge where that comes from. And another thing, when I was studying cultural anthropology years ago in university, they talk about change, the speed of change. So cultures where change happened gradually actually were able to evolve in a healthy adaptation to change. And they were able to keep autonomous and keep strong aspects of themselves. Again, keep the strengths of where we've gotten to in our process over the last several hundred years, several thousand years. You do a beautiful job of this transition. And there's also a lot of focus on help from outside, help from our spirit guides, help from off-worlders and interdimensionals. And it accelerates as we activate. It strengthens. It's a mutually co-creative dynamic. The more we step into abandoning our anxiety around time and really activating in the here and now, and not being fixated on how fast it happens, but how thoroughly it happens, how much integrity, the quality of the experience. Their help streams in faster. It's like we've created the channels to allow it in. Okay. Yes. Oh, I love what you're saying, Ricky, about holding the vibration and growing younger. And I always think it's quite phenomenal. Over the years, I've experienced that exact thing. And then it can even periodically shift on a trajectory of a few weeks or a few months where I go through a lot of anxiety or a lot of stress. And then I sort of age again. And then I heal and I, create space to integrate everything. And then I grow younger again. So this is not like a static point in time. Time is not static and fixated like that. It's multidimensional. All right, they're already singing. Yes. Carol, living hundreds of more years. Yes. And, how many different versions of that are possible? Like, it becomes almost a bit of a non-issue because we are that. Whatever way it happens, we are living for hundreds of years. Especially because we can already hear ourselves in the future calling back to us. Aww. Oh, yes. Thank you, Angela. Recognizing the supportive messages we are given from our guides and angels daily, that can be easily overlooked. And again, what about this expanded timeline? What about this longer term perspective allows you to relax into a deeper state of opening and presence in the here and now? Thank you. Beautiful. I'm just looking through. For our grandchildren, Marie, thank you. And our great-grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren and so on and so on. Okay. Also, my final word on timeline predictions is that we need to check in again regularly with them. This isn't a one-shot deal. Like, it's changing. It is activating. We might tune in next month and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's here. Why is it that this moment, it is important for us to receive the longer version of this? Because this is where we're at in terms of relaxing, in terms of not demanding so much urgency from ourselves and from our healers, our guides. It's about donating this is what the guys are saying. They're saying donating our energy into the collective time expansion, which is, if you do believe in time expansion, then you believe in relaxing and opening to it instead of grabbing at it and chasing it and attaching to it in that ego sort of way. So let's check in regularly with the timelines, with these timelines. This is a couple of years outdated, but it does look like, funny enough, when that came through, I was like, people are not ready for this. And maybe that was my ego that wasn't ready to stand in the fierceness of the repercussions of people's reaction to that. And maybe now I'm open enough and trusting enough. Not sure exactly. Let's look at building community. So lots of comments, or a few comments anyway, last time around when I was describing different types of community building practices. And I don't even remember if I said it on the live or someone else's show right now, but I'll just reiterate quickly that I have had decades of experience with intentional communities. I've actually been an integrated participant in, I believe, 4 different types of intentional communities over the last 35, 40 years. And I also wrote a thesis, a university thesis on intentional communities back in the late 90s. And I went on a cross-country tour to research the topic. And then I did a college level workshop series training on developing intentional communities, which, you know, interestingly enough, that was over 20 years ago. And there was such a small demographic of people that were really interested in it. So I had to put that aside and carry on with all kinds of other things that I was being drawn towards at that time. And now it feels like this is so potent and poignant in this juncture that we're in, to begin to expand into these different options and models. So I'll give you my very, very bottom line basic philosophy in a nutshell around creating community, which is, I called it building community instead of community building, because the most beautiful, ideal way to start an intentional community is to start a project. What happens when we start with the community, i.e., someone goes and buys a piece of land and goes and sets themselves up and invites other people to join them, is that you start with the idea of the community, but the relationships and the practical aspects of it have not been actualized first. So it's very challenging. It's a very challenging learning curve. It's not impossible, but it's super tricky. And the majority of communities that started with the land first, or the retreat center first, or that, just buy the thing and then bring in the people, build it and they'll come philosophy. The majority of those don't sustain themselves over a long period of time. And some of the most powerful communities, like with a long-term, they're around literally decades and decades later. Damanhura in Italy, Findhorn, the Farm in the USA. These communities all started with a project, and even Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil started, it's a huge organization now, but it began with a small group of people that were just putting on an event. So how many things that become lasting, long-term organizations and communities, they begin with a project of some kind where everybody can gather, put their energy in, create something, and then go, wow, that was interesting. We learned a lot. And some of us want to keep doing this. And then you expand to the next version of that. And if there's energy if, the energy is aligned with your intentions and your collective synergy, it'll go and it'll build. And before you know it, you'll have venues, land, investors, just keep building. So it also takes the pressure off. We got to go make this thing and make a pile of money to buy this thing to do da. It's let's start with vision, ideas, projects, small scale, grassroots, begin small and watch it grow. Let's ask what spirit wants us to know about this exact process right now, today. I just want to say one more thing about when I say right now, today, and in readings. Again, I've also noticed that people get challenged looking back and saying things didn't work out exactly the way that reader said or the way that psychic said or whatever. And what I've been shown over the years is that we are given stepping stones that match our capacity to sustain our evolution. So they may not be entirely the whole picture, but they're the piece that we need for this next step. Does that make sense? It's like, and that goes with timeline too. Like when I was channeling this 2 years ago, and when we're looking at it again today and seeing that that still has relevance to us right now, that creates a stepping stone where we can reorganize ourselves and prepare for a different approach to the future. So right now, the approach with intentional communities, let's have a look. I'm shuffling here. The approach is, and when I say intentional communities, I mean any sort of community building where we are coming together with a shared common purpose or intention. And again, like I said before, my experience has been just coming together with the intention of coming together as a community is not, well, it doesn't offer the same kind of strong bonding necessary to create a lasting foundation that coming together around an actual project or an event or some purpose creates. If the purpose is just to come together, what I've witnessed over the years in so many different arenas is that people come together and they just talk and they all have different opinions, and then they get discouraged and say, this community thing doesn't work. I don't want to do it. But if we can get together on something that we can all agree is a valuable project or event, that has the potential to create the bonds that will be sustained over time. Fascinating. Oh, wow. Okay, this is interesting. Wow. So cool. Haha. I love this. All right. Here we go. Here's us. Ouch. Tired. Too much going on in the brain. This is all a lot. Too many concepts, too much thinking, overwhelm, information overload. How do we take in more information about community? So I was actually shown this recently in another reading. We are right now this week, and I apologize, I didn't do my soul sampler this week. I actually filmed it twice and the sound didn't work. So here we are. This is this week's soul sampler, apparently. It's the week we're in right now is actually the week where we can set the most profound intentions for this upcoming year. It's the lunar eclipse, new moon in Aries, paired with the equinox. Pretty potent stuff, right? So usually at this new moon in Aries, it's the visionary moon of the whole year, the new moon in Aries, the one time, the biggest energy around creating lasting results from your intentions and your visions. Normally it's like, get out your vision boards and be very creative and brainstorm. And this year I got empty the recycle bin, empty the cache, clear. Like there's something about literally sorting through our stuff, sorting through our beliefs, sorting through our collective agreements. There's a lot of there's a lot of like saying, okay, I'm done with that. 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 And because what we are needing to open to, there's no room for it. The inbox is full. We got to recycle some of this and get it out of there. So the beautiful thing about the big energy of the month of March and even into early April this year is that if we spent the next 10 days or 2 weeks clearing, then actually early April, we can go into vision. Right now, we're in deconstruction, emptiness. So, with regards to intentional community building, ideas, new paradigm versions of community, we're already doing it. First of all, what we're doing right now is community building. This is it. It's begun. It's begun. The guides are actually saying we've been building and building and building for about 4 years. And we're already on the path together. In order for us to go deeper into this process, we're going to need to let go of some of our old beliefs. We're going to need to do some teardown first. And where we begin, look at that. We start with one connection. This has shown up in a few readings over the last couple of years, the community of two. Yeah, the community of two. Whenever 2 or more of you are gathered, start again, community of two. If this is an intimate partnership, if this is a friendship, if this is, family, 2 people in a family, you start with 2. And you alchemize. You say, let's work together on a project. Let's create something. We have similar philosophy. The timing is right. Let's focus our attention on combining our resources. Now, I know this seems so simple, but we are doing this differently than we've ever done it in our lifetimes. I've sat in on so many group processing meetings, consensus, group dynamic, consensus decision-making meetings and stuff through the years. And all of what we learned in that is so valuable. And there's phenomenal tools and resources available to us like never before. And we're starting from scratch in a way energetically because of what's been happening, because of where we are with our activation and opening. So let's start small, 2 people. And once you get a synergy going, right? Once you get this like back and forth flow happening, it's like, well, that feels great. Look, we're like magic's happening. We're co-creating and it's becoming effortless and we're not fighting and we're, we made space and we start with a community of 2. And then someone outside is watching and going, can I join? Try it out. Experiment, explore. So, again, interesting. The advice is saying, again, it's that pushing through too much, too fast. This is creative chaos and conflict card. And this is, arming ourselves and being armored. So this could be more in the outer world right now, that we're just passing through the chaos and focusing on the community of 2. I mean, obviously, if it's 3 or 4, beautiful, but it doesn't have to be even that big. It can start with just 2 people. And this is what you're focusing on as opposed to this. Yeah, it's, the analogy that's come through over time, the last, say, 3 or 4 years for me, is imagining a hornet's nest in your garden. Maybe a tree fell down and the hornets went and gathered in the tree, and now you've got this big hornet's nest in your garden. Big. Maybe there's red ants under it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to attack it? You're going to pour boiling water down it? Light it on fire with gasoline? The more aggravated you make the landscape, it could start off with hornets, you burn them out, and then the red ants come. Like, basically, if you put that energy of like, gotta kill this with what's going on around us right now, the chaos in the world, if you attack it, if you go rushing at it with your armor on, well, it's going to create more and more of the same kind of consequence. So the message is to navigate around it. You literally cordon it off. It's a sacred space of alchemical, shamanic mystery healing. Something mysterious is happening there. Something potent is happening. And you need to leave it alone, give it space, navigate around it, give it a wide berth. Give it a wide berth and focus on the other part of the garden. So in another area, you're going to make a beautiful little sanctuary. Does it diminish your beautiful little sanctuary over there that there's a hornet's nest and a tree with, now you've got it cordoned off, maybe with a beautiful little fence? And you could say, I'm going to leave that alone for 20 years, 30 years. And eventually that tree might be decomposed and turned into the richest soil to fertilize the best garden that you can't even imagine. And by that time, you and your community of 2 or 3 or 4 are ready to plant something in it. So these 2 topics have beautifully segued themselves together. And as always, it is self-mastery, step by step, moving in a direction, working on yourself, and emptying out the old concepts, the old philosophies, the old ideas, making room for a few new ways of looking at things. This is the messenger. A few new ways of looking at things. Starting small, miles to go, step by step in that direction, working on yourself all the way along. And again, this has a lot to do with this Eight of Cups and Eight of Swords is what I said at the very beginning of this whole presentation, which is if we, in the transition of this empire slowly, gradually diminishing and collapsing, if we don't take the time to do the inner work to create something different in ourselves, I mean, that's the community of one. If we don't start there and then gradually move in this direction, the community of two, we're going to end up creating, just by default, something similar to what we're trying to move away from. So I'm encouraged by this. This is the Vision Quest card, going on a personal vision quest. However, you're guided to go on your own little shamanic journey and look at where you're still held by your old beliefs, your old philosophies, one by one, pulling those swords out. And, this Eight of Cups, you'll notice the character is going on a journey. The cups are all standing up, like lined up on a fence, and there's that little space. There's a little space where there's a missing cup, and the character is going to look for that cup. When they find that cup, it's the Nine of Cups. It's the wish fulfilled. But they have to do some inner soul searching to find that missing cup. Like, it has to do with true fulfillment and satisfaction. And there's something in this card where in the past, the person has been willing to sacrifice themselves to receive fulfillment from others. They've got a pattern. The eights are about predictable patterns. So they've got a pattern of self-sacrifice that doesn't matter how connected they get, they repeat this pattern. There's always something missing. So to me, the challenge is, and I feel like I'm getting 8 weeks and 2 months. The challenge is we've got about 8 weeks, is what the guides are saying at this moment, to work on that tendency to sabotage, self-sacrifice. We're doing our own personal vision quest. Remember I said, how much can we empty out? And then we're looking at building relationship, new relationship from this place. Because when this character comes back from their vision quest, they're in the Nine of Cups, which is wish fulfillment. And that's such a beautiful place to create from, to synthesize. Higher ground, seeking higher ground, higher perspective. Yes. Thank you, Marcia, for your comment on the word avatar. I'm going to think about that. I'm not really attached to that word at all, actually. And yeah, we are human beings with feelings. I'm happy to exchange that word. I'd love to hear what, a suggestion of how you would describe these beings coming in. Yeah, I'm so curious. Yeah, timelines change so we can grow up. Thank you. Carol, starting a healing center, drawing others to join. So Carol, I encourage you to maybe begin with another person or just a small group of people and have an event. Just really get that momentum going and feel where spirit is ready to like go put the wind in your sails and send you in a beautiful direction. We start by finding our tribe, Valerie. Yeah. How to start shared purpose and intention. Okay. So Valerie, interesting. Thank you so much for that comment, because this is a common thing. I mean, I do it too. I'm like, okay, where's my tribe? Where's my tribe? Even though I've had different versions of tribe in the past, lots of things have changed and people have gone on and done different things and there's dispersion. So yeah, community can be built anywhere. It's just people coming together with a common intention or project. So maybe the community for you will begin with an idea that you want to be creating. And when you put that idea out to yourself to begin with, like, and start small. Start with like, maybe it is an event. Maybe it is a small business idea or a project. And you've heard about it, or you got some message showed up along your path, spirit inspired you. You're like, yeah, I really would love to do something like that. So start small, start with the vision, and then put that vision out. So maybe you are hosting an event or creating a business idea, a little project. When you actually go to put your idea out, you might go on the internet and realize, oh, actually, there's someone else that's already doing something like that. People classically, when they see that, they go, oh, I missed the boat. Someone else is doing it, and that's competition. And so sometimes it is that, and sometimes maybe you would do it very differently and you don't want to ally with that person, but sometimes there's something that can happen if you connect and follow their lead for a little bit. You can always separate down the road and go off and do your version of it. But this is how we get started. I've witnessed over the years the magic and miracles of synchronicity, putting people together. And often we go towards something with a certain intention, right? We go like, I'm going to, put on this event, or I'm going to join this group. And then it's like, we thought we were doing this thing, but we end up meeting someone or getting turned on to something else and then going in a different direction. And then that becomes the thing that we're doing. So it's that curiosity and joy that I always come back to, which is like childhood innocence. And when we think about ourselves as children, it's like, if you're on the playground, this is always so phenomenal to watch. If you're on the playground and you want to play a game, what do? You have the idea of the game in your head. You go to the other kids. Maybe you have one friend that you say, I want to play this game. You want to try it with me? And then they go, okay. And then you start playing, and then somebody sees you and they're like, can I play? So there's that, and this is where we get into our childhood wounds. Were you the person that sat on the sidelines and had ideas, but you tried to get people to play, and maybe you were demanding, like, no, come and do it this way. No, you can't do that. It's my game, my rules, right? It's like, this is where we get into working on what's going on inside of us and what creates the synergy. There's no shame, there's no blame. We all have all of this spectrum in us. And so think of yourself as that child on the playground. You've got an idea, or maybe you see one other kid doing something and you think, well, they look kind of lonely and that looks sort of fun. I think I might just go over and participate for a while. You know, as children, we don't necessarily feel, unless we get really already caught up into cliques and ego and who's popular and who isn't. And of course, we know where that goes. But the natural innocence of children playing is always dynamic and creative. Like if they're in their natural state, it's just like idea, and this game is this, but then it morphs into that, and then they add this, and next thing you know, they're doing something totally different. So we've got to, or we have the invitation to return to that state with our building of community. Wow. Thank you, everyone, for going on this very long journey. Yes. Beautiful. Hi, Murray. Community in Kitchener-Waterloo. Woo-hoo! Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. And hi, Ricky. Thanks for that quest for learning. And there's no owner's manual for manifesting. It's trial and error and learning. And yeah, I love that too. It is that, and same with what I was saying, it's really that adaptability as well that we're in right now, where this old concept, what's fading away in terms of timelines and building community in our new earth that's happening right now, is that if we believe that in that straight uphill, like, oh, evolution happens like this, and if you dip down, you're failing, that is outside of natural law or universal law, because you know, evolution is a spiral or a waving line. So it's always progressing, but it may appear to be going down. And if we don't allow for that natural growth experience, the highs and the lows, if we go, oh no, I've got to go back to square one and start again, there's something in that. There's a defeatism, a self-sabotage, a disappointment, where we become disillusioned. I tried and I tried and I tried and it didn't work. And so again, it's getting into this playful process, relaxing your ego, and enjoying the ride, everyone. Enjoying the ride. Blessings to you all. Have a beautiful week. I look forward to sharing again in the near future. Bye for now.